We're back with our spotlight on the schools, and we're here with Dr. Wells, and we're going to talk about PBIS. Dr. Wells, what does PBIS stand for, and what is its purpose?
Sure. PBIS stands for Positive Behavior Intervention Supports, and it's an effectiveness-based system that is really rolled out in a school, in a whole school building, and in our case, multiple school buildings actually working on that within each of their buildings. Overall, if you can break it down, it's really a systematic application of effective instructional and behavioral supports for students throughout a building so that you're producing the desired social and learning outcomes that you want. As we all know, behavior is very important, and the more that a building has the capacity to enable and enhance great behaviors for students, the more academic and instructional work that will take place. There's several key elements that one should be aware of that make this different. First of all, it's important to understand that PBIS is not a prepackaged curriculum that gets rolled out that you do exactly or whatever is in this prepackaged curriculum that comes to the buildings. Rather, it's a system of strategies that are developed to really enhance and support the positive behaviors that you want to take place within a school building. Some key factors about this is, first of all, it's system-wide, so that within the whole building, this is developed and this is implemented and this is managed. So it's a building-wide system. It's not an individual group or applied to students individually. It's really applied systems-wide, especially at Tier 1. The other thing is that it's based on actually instruction of what is good behavior in a building. So especially at the elementary levels, we look at instead of assuming that every student comes ready to know and understand what that great behavior we're looking for in each area of the building is, we actually train that. We say that, well, within the lunchroom, here are our expected behaviors. And perhaps in the hallway during passing time, here are our expected behaviors. And so it's more instructionally based rather than just sort of this intuitively based. Obviously, that's changed as students progress through the levels because you would have a little bit different expectation at each level or based on the developmental level of each student that you're looking at. Another thing is that, as I mentioned, it's implemented system-wide, but it's also a place where within the systems they can monitor and look for positive behavior. So we're not just reacting, we're looking for those positive behaviors, and as a system, as a building, they can reinforce that and award sort of that positive behavior. Now, having said that, I don't want people to think this is where everyone's going to get a sticker for positive behavior. That's not what it's about. It's about really reinforcing the expectations of our building together. And then the last piece that's really important is it's really a lot of data. And if we look at a particular area or function within our building and we say we're having more issues in this particular area than others, we have actual data to look at. We can look at what we've been doing as a building and we can say we need to do something different for this because it's a collection of data and it's using that to make best decisions and moving forward your program for the students who are involved.
Dr. Wells, can you break down the 3-level system?
Sure. Similar to how we look at instructional supports or academic supports, we also look at behavior and emotional supports in the same route. So the first level is often referred to within the educational system as a Tier 1. Tier 1 just basically means it's applied to everyone universally. So your students, and let's just focus at an elementary level as an example, all students would be provided instruction in here are the expectations for the classroom, here are the expectations for the hallway, here are the expectations for the lunchroom, or here are the expectations for the computer room. And all students are provided that information and they're supported in that information. And then building-wide, they support those great efforts. Tier 2, or the second level, would be for those students who might need more support beyond that. So we're talking about a smaller amount of our population. Maybe 10 to 15% of the total student population has some challenges or some unique needs where they need more specific interventions, either geared toward that group or a small group of students, about how to develop some personal strategies or some school-wide strategies for that group of learners. That's in addition to the Tier 1, because Tier 1 still applies to everyone. And then the last level, which would be Tier 3, as we refer to it in that educational model, is between 1 and 5% of the population. And that's for a very small group of students who really need some more intensive, more focused behavioral and emotional supports beyond what is universally applied for the rest of the students. It's still geared toward the expectations model. It's still geared toward understanding when we see positive behaviors, but it is for a smaller group who need more intensive supports. So that's why we have the different levels.
How is PBIS regulated?
Sure. Well, PBIS is regulated, if you want to think about it, through the individual schools and how they look at it and apply it. Now, it is a system of data collection. So that's important to know, that when you're involved in the PBIS system, there is some data that needs to be collected, and that data is to be shared and looked at so that we can all make the best decisions if you're within the Wisconsin system regarding PBIS. So it's not necessarily state regulated with statutes and rules, but it is a very best practice that's been around for a while.
So why is it important to have PBIS operational in the classrooms?
Sure. You know, as I mentioned, PBIS has really been around since the early, I want to say 1980s, nationwide. About in 1997, it really began to receive national attention. Wisconsin began implementation in 2006 with PBIS. So it's been around for quite some time. It's very well researched. In Wisconsin, a year ago, I think the data was that there were about 236 or so school districts who had implemented this. So if you think about the individual buildings within those districts, we're talking into the well over the 1,000s mark of buildings that had implemented this. So there's a lot of research that goes along with it. And the reason why it's important for us is, first of all, it's really good for kids. When you have a program that is good for kids, that is good for the system and good for the educators, you know, it's something that you really want to wrap your head around. It's been well tested nationally, and it's been well tested in Wisconsin since 2006. It really looks at reinforcement and of the great expectations and the proper behaviors, because we know both through demonstration and through research that focusing on what goes wrong and punishment in that reactive mode isn't the best way to advance great behaviors, especially throughout a building, for a whole group of students. And in each district, then it provides more consistency. Even though a building may have a little more individual focus because they're developed at the buildings, if a student moves from building to building, or if they're in various programs throughout the district, sort of that level of expectation, that level of this is what we have for proper behaviors, is carried throughout the system. So, you know, overall, it just really backs up that idea that it's good for kids, and if it leads to better behavioral outcomes, it's going to lead to better academic and instructional outcomes.
Thank you, Dr. Wells.
You're welcome.